On a chilly autumn afternoon in Lawrence County, Missouri, Clara Evans wandered through the creaky aisles of an old estate auction. She was 24, a recent history graduate who loved unearthing forgotten relics. While others bid on antique furniture and jewelry, Clara's eyes caught a wooden box tucked beneath a table, marked with fading letters, "Family Keepsakes, 1847." The auctioneer barely gave it attention. "Old photographs and papers," he muttered. Clara, intrigued, raised her hand and secured the lot for just $5. Later, in the quiet of her small apartment, she carefully opened the box. Most of it was empty, but at the bottom lay a single faded photograph. A wagon, settlers gathered stiffly in front, sepia tones blurring the edges. Something about their faces made her uneasy. They weren't proud or hopeful like most pioneer portraits she had seen in textbooks. Their eyes seemed heavy, some even fearful. Clara felt a strange pull. She slipped the photo into her bag, unaware that this impulsive purchase would uncover a story buried for more than 150 years, a story no one had ever dared to finish telling. That evening, Clara set the photo on her desk under the warm glow of her lamp. She leaned close, running a finger over the settlers' faces. Most looked weary, but one detail caught her eye: a little girl clutching a ragged doll. Unlike the adults, her expression wasn't tired. It was terrified. Wide eyes, lips pressed tight, as if she wanted to scream but couldn't. Clara leaned back, unsettled. Why would a child look so frightened in what should have been a proud family portrait? The more she studied it, the more convinced she became that the photo wasn't just documenting a moment. It was capturing something hidden. Her curiosity gnawed at her. She pulled out her old laptop, scanned the image, and opened it on her screen. With a shaky hand, she zoomed in. Grainy pixels filled the screen, and just beyond the settler's wagon, half hidden in shadows, she noticed something she hadn't before: a faint outline of a man, taller than the others, cloaked in darkness. The hair on her arms rose. "That can't be right," she whispered. But even as she told herself it was a trick of the light, she knew deep down someone else was there. Clara spent hours staring at her screen. Each time she zoomed closer, the image became more disturbing. The man's pale face emerged from the shadows with sharp clarity. His eyes seemed darker than ink, his lips pulled into a crooked smirk. Unlike the settlers, he wasn't dressed in frontier clothes. His cloak looked almost medieval, its folds blending unnaturally with the shadows. She rubbed her temples. This has to be an illusion, some damage on the photo. But no matter how she adjusted the contrast or lighting, the figure remained. Worse, his gaze seemed fixed, not on the group, but directly toward the lens, toward her. Clara leaned back, her heart racing. Early photography in 1847 was rare, expensive, and time-consuming. Families sat still for long minutes. Whoever this man was, he had stood perfectly still too. But why was he hiding? And why did the settlers look so uneasy, as if aware of his presence but unable to acknowledge it? A creeping sense of dread pressed in on Clara. She muttered to herself, "Who are you?" Yet the photograph offered no answers, only questions she wasn't sure she wanted to pursue. But she couldn't stop herself. The next morning, Clara carried the photo to her old mentor, Dr. James Harris, a Civil War historian who had always encouraged her passion for artifacts. They met at a small cafe near campus, the aroma of coffee filling the air. When Clara slid the photo across the table, Dr. Harris adjusted his glasses and frowned. He studied the settlers' tense faces, then squinted at the figure in the shadows. His brow furrowed. "This," he began slowly, "shouldn't be possible." Clara leaned in. "What do you mean?" Photography was still in its infancy in 1847. For a family to have a photo like this, it would have been costly. They'd dress their best, look proud. But these people, he tapped the paper, they look frightened. And that man, he shook his head. He doesn't belong. His clothes, his stance. It's wrong. Clara felt her pulse quicken. So you see him too. Dr. Harris gave her a wary look. Clara, sometimes photos degrade strangely. Shadows play tricks. Don't let your imagination run wild. But the unease in his voice betrayed him. He had seen the figure, and it disturbed him too. That night, Clara returned to the wooden box. She had set it aside, assuming it was empty, but as she lifted the fabric lining, her fingers brushed against something thin and hard. She pulled out a small, leather-bound book, its cover cracked with age, its pages yellowed. A diary. The first entry was dated March 1847. The handwriting was elegant, though faded. We begin our journey westward. The children are restless, but John assures me we will find peace in Oregon. I pray he is right. Clara's heart raced. The diary belonged to Margaret Whitfield, the matriarch of the family in the photo. She flipped through more entries, her excitement giving way to dread. Margaret described wagon travel, storms, hunger, but then her tone shifted. There is a man who lingers near our campfires. None claim to know him, yet he follows. Always in the distance, always watching. Clara's stomach knotted. Margaret had seen him. The same man, hidden in the photograph. The diary and the photo were pieces of the same puzzle, one that Margaret had tried to leave behind, and Clara had just reopened it. Clara stayed up late, devouring Margaret's words. The entries grew darker with each page. Margaret described sleepless nights where she awoke certain that eyes were on her. He lingers by the trees when the fire dims, Margaret wrote. John says it is only my nerves, but I know what I see. A man cloaked, with a smile that chills my bones. He does not speak, only watches. The settlers dismissed her fears as hysteria. They told her she was imagining things, that the wilderness was making her anxious. But Margaret's conviction never wavered. He walks among us now, one entry said, hiding in plain sight. And yet, the others refused to believe. Clara's hand trembled as she traced the faded ink. This wasn't just a pioneer's superstitious fear. Margaret's description perfectly matched the shadowed figure in the photo. Clara whispered into the silence of her room. You weren't imagining it, Margaret. You saw him, and now I do too. The weight of history pressed heavy on her chest. She wasn't just reading words from the past. She was stepping into Margaret's terror, a terror that had crossed a century and a half to reach her. The next diary entries grew more harrowing. One cold night, Margaret recorded a tragedy. Young Samuel went missing in the night. His mother screamed for hours, searching. At dawn, we found his shoes near the riverbank. The men say wolves took him, but there was no blood, no tracks, only silence. Margaret didn't believe in wolves. She wrote, The dark man was there last evening. I saw his shape beyond the firelight. When Samuel vanished, so did he. No one listens to me, but I know. He takes the children. Clara's chest tightened. She stared at the photo again. There, in the corner, was Samuel, smiling faintly, holding his father's hand. He had been alive when the photograph was taken, but not for long. The settlers in the picture seemed weighed down by unspoken knowledge, as if they understood something they dared not say. Clara sat back, whispering. Margaret was right. Her apartment felt colder. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper. She glanced around nervously, reminding herself she was alone. But for the first time, she wasn't sure she believed it. The diary consumed Clara. She skipped work at the library, stopped answering texts from friends. Her small apartment turned into a makeshift investigation room. She printed copies of the settlers' faces, pinned diary excerpts on her wall, and connected them with strings like a detective. Every evening she returned to the photograph. Each zoom seemed to reveal new, unsettling details. The wagon's wooden side bore faint scratches as if something had clawed it. The settlers' shadows leaned in the wrong direction, like the light itself had recoiled. But it was the little girl, Emily, that haunted her most. Her terrified stare seemed almost alive, begging Clara to notice. At night, Clara dreamed of standing among the settlers. The cloaked figure loomed just behind her, whispering words she could never remember upon waking. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat, and always found the photo lying closer to her bed than where she had left it. Her friends worried. "Clara, you're losing yourself in this," one said. But Clara couldn't stop. Margaret's voice across the pages, Emily's gaze in the photo. They demanded to be heard, and Clara had no choice but to listen. One late night, Clara's phone rang. It was Dr. Harris. His voice sounded uneasy. "Clara, I've been digging," he said. "I cross-referenced Margaret Whitfield. She and her family were part of a wagon train in 1847, but they never arrived. No records, no graves. It's as if the entire party vanished." Clara swallowed hard. So the photograph could be the last trace of them. "Yes," Harris admitted. "And that man, I don't know what to tell you." Some stories from the trail mention a watcher, a figure that followed wagons west. Families whispered about disappearances, unexplained deaths, but historians dismissed it as folklore. Clara's heart raced. Folklore, diaries, and now a photograph. It all pointed to the same chilling possibility. "Professor," she said softly, "I think Margaret wanted us to know." She left the diary, the photo, a warning. Dr. Harris was silent for a long time before answering. "Be careful, Clara. Some stories aren't meant to be uncovered." But Clara couldn't stop now. Margaret's voice had reached across centuries, and Clara felt she was the only one listening. Back at her desk, Clara enlarged the photo once more. This time she focused not on the people, but the wagon. On its side, barely visible, were markings, scratches, or carvings. Adjusting the contrast, she gasped. It was a crude symbol, an eye within a circle. Clara searched archives and folklore records. After hours, she found a chilling reference in an 1830s journal. Settlers spoke of the Watcher of the Plains, a cloaked figure said to follow travelers. To ward him off, they carved protective symbols, eyes within circles, onto their wagons. Her skin prickled. The Whitfields had carved one too, which meant they knew. She returned to the diary. Sure enough, an entry mentioned it. "John laughs at my carving, but I cannot bear his eyes upon us. Emily sleeps with the symbol under her pillow now." Clara sat frozen. Margaret had fought to protect her family, carving symbols, recording warnings, but it hadn't been enough. Clara whispered, "You tried to stop him. And now he's here again, through this photo." The symbol was a warning, a desperate shield scratched into wood, preserved in the picture, waiting for someone, someday, to see. The following nights grew unbearable. Clara's dreams turned violent. She dreamed of standing among the settlers at dusk, the prairie stretching endlessly. Behind her she always felt him, the watcher. His hand hovered inches from her shoulder, his breath cold. He never moved quickly, only lingered, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. Each morning she woke gasping, convinced the whisper had followed her into waking. One night she jolted awake to find her desk lamp flickering. The photograph, which she had left neatly on her desk, now lay face up on her pillow. Her heart pounded as she shoved it back, locking the box. But the sense of being watched didn't leave. She called Dr. Harris in panic. "He's here, Professor. I know it sounds crazy, but I feel him. Every night, in the shadows." Harris sighed heavily. "Clara, maybe you need rest." But Clara cut him off. "This isn't imagination. Margaret warned us. He doesn't just haunt the past. He finds the ones who look too closely." Her voice cracked. "And now, he's found me." Desperate, Clara visited the Missouri Historical Society. She showed the photograph to Mr. Langley, an elderly archivist with decades of experience. His reaction startled her. His hands shook as he held the picture. Where did you get this?" Clara explained quickly, mentioning the auction and the Whitfield diary. Langley disappeared into the archives and returned with another photograph taken in 1903. Different family, different setting. But in the background, barely visible in the trees, stood the same cloaked figure. Clara's blood ran cold. "It's him," she whispered. Langley nodded grimly. "I've seen him before. He appears in photographs spanning decades, always blurred, always distant, never aged." Clara's stomach twisted. "So he's real. He isn't bound to one family. He's been here all along." Langley placed a hand on her arm. "Some things don't belong in history books, Miss Evans. They belong in warnings." Clara clutched the photo to her chest. The Watcher wasn't just folklore. He was documented, consistent, unchanging. And if he had followed families for centuries, she feared what that meant for her. Clara's world unraveled. She stopped leaving her apartment, curtains drawn tight. Every creak of the building made her jump. When her phone rang, she expected silence, or worse, whispers. Her friends begged her to get help. "You're scaring us," one said. But Clara couldn't explain. How could she tell them that a cloaked man from 1847 was following her? She called Dr. Harris again, desperate. His voice was stern but worried. "Clara, obsession can create illusions. Margaret believed she saw him. Maybe you're falling into the same trap." Clara nearly shouted, "No! He's real. Margaret saw him. The Whitfields vanished. And now, he's here, Professor. Don't you see? This isn't just history. It's happening again." For a long time, Harris was silent. Then he whispered, "If Margaret's diary is true, Clara, you've opened something that never should have been opened." Clara dropped the phone, trembling. She was past the point of no return. Whether anyone believed her or not, she knew one thing. The Watcher was real, and he was closer than ever. One night, Clara reread Margaret's diary with new eyes. Buried deep in the later entries, she found passages about Emily, the little girl with the doll. "Emily speaks of him," Margaret wrote. "She says he visits her dreams, promising she'll never be hungry, never afraid again. She smiles when she speaks of him. I fear she is tempted. I must keep her close, or he will take her." Clara's chest tightened. Emily had seen him too. She wasn't just afraid, she was being spoken to. Clara looked again at the photograph. Emily's doll stared back, its stitched mouth twisted into a grim expression. Was it her imagination, or had the doll's face been sewn that way deliberately? Margaret had tried to shield her daughter, carving symbols, keeping her close. But Clara suspected it hadn't been enough. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Emily, did he take you?" The silence of her apartment pressed heavy. For the first time, Clara felt not just watched, but pitied, like Margaret and Emily were reaching out across time, begging her not to make the same mistake. The storm came suddenly that night. Rain battered her windows, wind howled like a voice. Clara tried to sleep, but the air felt charged, heavy. At midnight, her lamp flickered. The photo box rattled on her desk. Heart pounding, Clara sat up. From the corner of her room, a shadow stretched unnaturally long. Slowly, it rose up the wall, tall, cloaked, unmistakable. Her breath froze. The whisper came next. Not from her ears, but inside her head. "The truth is not meant to be seen." Clara screamed, stumbling back. The shadow wavered, then vanished as the lamp flared bright again. The photo lay face down on the floor. Clara picked it up with shaking hands. For the first time, the settlers' faces seemed to shift. Emily's eyes wider, Margaret's mouth slightly parted in a scream that hadn't been there before. Clara dropped the photo, sobbing. It wasn't just history anymore. The Watcher had crossed into her world, and he wanted her silent. For 2 days, Clara didn't leave her bed. She barely ate, afraid to look at the photograph again. But Margaret's words echoed in her mind. "No one listens. I must write so someone will know." Clara realized Margaret hadn't written for herself. She had written for the future, for Clara. Shaking, Clara rose and stared at the photo pinned to her wall. "You silenced them," she said aloud, "but you won't silence me." She emailed Dr. Harris and proposed a lecture. She wanted students, historians, even journalists to see the photo, the diary, the evidence. If he feeds on fear and silence, she reasoned, then truth is our weapon. Harris was hesitant but agreed. "If you really believe this is history worth telling, then we'll tell it." Clara felt the first flicker of courage in weeks. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't alone. She would give Margaret and Emily what they never had: a voice. The lecture hall was full that night. Students whispered, reporters scribbled notes, and the hum of anticipation filled the air. Clara stood at the podium, clutching Margaret's diary. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied as she read the entries. She projected the photograph on a large screen. Gasps filled the room when she zoomed in, revealing the cloaked figure. "This family disappeared without a trace," Clara said. "But Margaret left us this, her voice, her fear, her truth. The Watcher isn't just folklore, he's real. And we owe it to them not to look away." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered in awe, others scoffed in disbelief. But all eyes were on the screen. Clara closed with conviction. Silence is his power. Tonight, we refuse to be silent. For a brief moment, she felt Margaret beside her, proud, relieved. Just as Clara finished, the lights flickered. A cold wind swept the room, though no doors were open. Gasps turned to screams, as several in the audience swore they saw movement in the projection, the cloaked figure's head turning slightly, as if acknowledging the crowd. A wave of fear rippled, but Clara stood tall. "Do not be afraid," she said firmly. "He feeds on silence and fear. Tonight, we see him, we name him, and that is how he loses." The light steadied, the chill lifted. The audience sat in stunned silence. Dr. Harris whispered to her, "You may have just changed everything." Clara knew she had. For the first time, the Watcher wasn't a secret lurking in shadows. He was a story told aloud, shared, remembered, and in that moment, he had no power. In the weeks that followed, Clara's story spread. Historians revisited forgotten diaries. Families once lost to history were documented. Survivors' accounts were digitized. Photos once ignored were re-examined, revealing faint, unsettling figures, but also giving voice to those erased by time. Clara realized something profound. The Watcher thrived not because he was invincible, but because victims were silenced, forgotten. By remembering them, by telling their stories, his power weakened. Margaret's diary became a published archive. Emily's terrified face in the photo became a symbol of resilience. Their tragedy was no longer just whispers in a forgotten box. It became history remembered. Clara smiled one evening as she read an article titled "The Whitfields of 1847, Voices Restored." She whispered, "You did it, Margaret. They'll never forget you now." The Watcher might still exist, but memory itself had become resistance. On a quiet evening, Clara returned the photo and diary to the wooden box. She set it gently on her shelf and whispered, "Rest now, Margaret. Rest, Emily. We see you. We remember you." For the first time, the photo no longer frightened her. The cloaked man was still there, yes, but powerless against the light of truth. Clara sat by her window, reflecting. Fear, she realized, only thrives when we refuse to face it. Silence allows shadows to grow. But when we remember, when we speak truth aloud, even the darkest figures lose their grip. She thought of Margaret carving symbols into wagons, writing desperate diary entries, trying to leave a trace. And now, across time, her voice had finally been heard. Clara smiled through tears. The past hadn't haunted her. It had chosen her to carry its story. And in doing so, she had learned the most powerful lesson of all. That memory is stronger than fear, and truth endures longer than shadows.